Okay, so a lot of people want to know what is my beef with Tar. I've constantly complained about it, but I guess I never really got into the nitty-gritty of it. I just talked about how I don't trust it. Look, I know Tar is impeccably made. Just the craft is there. There's so much control. There's so much to unpack. Every image is just loaded. I get it. My problem with the movie is its intentions, and of course it's a dangerous game to ascribe intentions onto a movie, which is why I've never really gone there. But you know what? Like, this is a movie that goes beyond craft because it is a movie that is engaging in conversations with Me Too and cancel culture. Tar comes off like that person that confronts your beliefs with a bunch of questions. The person that gives you a lot of whataboutisms and what about this and hey, what about this, and asks you a lot of devil's advocate questions in a way just chipping away at your arguments where they obscure their intentions, but they try to use their questions to sort of chip away at you. And so yeah, I am suspicious of a movie that chooses to engage in a story about Me Too where a woman is guilty instead of a man when we know in reality it's not usually the case. Where Tar really went off for me is during the blind auditions. Okay, you might remember the blind auditions where the people, members of the orchestra, they have their rating sheets, and in that moment, Tar hears the heels of a woman she's attracted to. And immediately, when she realizes who's behind the walls, she erases her ratings because she's clearly now going to change her mind because, hey, she wants to get to know that woman. So here's the thing, the blind auditions were used as an example when there were a lot of conversations about gender parity in filmmaking, as in why there wasn't enough female directors. And I'm talking long before the Me Too moment took off. I'm talking about like before the Weinstein allegations came out, when there was just a conversation about the lack of females, about how there was only about 18% female filmmakers and only about 4% making movies with a budget over $1 million. When we were having conversations about, the biases, the systemic biases that kept women out of positions of power within filmmaking, the blind auditions in symphonies was used as an example. So they were saying that blind auditions was a way to make sure that a person's gender would not affect whether they got the job or not. However, they realized even with the blind auditions, women weren't getting enough of the roles. And they realized the reason why women still weren't getting those roles is because the unconscious bias was still in effect. The people with the rating sheets could still hear the heel. And that was an example used by the people researching unconscious bias within film. And so I find it insidious that Todd Fields co-opts an example that was used to argue that there's unconscious bias and systemic barriers for women in film in his film about a woman abusing power. It just feels like he's polluting the arguments that might work against a male filmmaker like him. There are just so many ways like that where his movie shows its disdain for woke culture, cancel culture, Me Too culture, however you want to tag it. I mean, you put this together with that one virtuoso scene, The Long Take, where Kate Blanchett spins circles around that BIPOC pangender kid whose big argument is, I'm sorry, I don't deal with white cisgender people who may have had a lot of sex. To have Lydia Tarr go toe to toe with a kid who just comes up with those arguments. Yes, I know we're seeing Lydia Tarr's monstrous behavior here, but she's also pit opposite someone who can't mount an argument. So in this movie, we're constantly either admiring Tar or bracing for her monstrousness. The movie doesn't really have any empathy for the people who are victimized by Tar. The movie doesn't have any empathy for the people who might pose arguments against Tar. The movie doesn't have any empathy for the people who are affected by systemic barriers. The movie's only interested in how power, having too much power, having too much admiration can create monsters. Not gender, not being a man, none of that stuff. Just systems of power can create monsters. And how, in that situation, an old school artist come monster like Tar can become someone who has to perform cosplay because of a new generation.